reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 21, Episode 3 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Davey.
I'm not Davey. I'm not Kimmy.
Stork.
That's
Some sort of bird animal.
some sort of.
A new guy. Who are you and what do you do that makes you famous?
Yeah.
My name is Davey, and I've been gaming for a very long time, since D&D First Edition.
Ooh, nice pedigree. Excellent.
Yep. And I've run LARPs both on the East Coast and the West Coast.
Nice.
What kind of LARPs?
I did Vampire LARP on the East Coast back when that was cool. And
On the East Coast, or just because they're still cool?
Well, yeah,
Clearly.
of course. Yeah, totally cool.
Yeah, totally. They're fine.
No, I mean, But and then out on the West Coast here, we did a Boffer LARP which is still running. I'm just not running it anymore. Called Dying Kingdoms. DyingKingdoms.com. Have fun.
Nice.
I know a lot of people who are involved with Dying Kingdoms.
Yeah.
A lot of people, actually.
Is
Yeah,
that your
it's-
fault? You started that?
No, Jess Heinig started it, and then when he moved up north and needed a break, a couple of other friends stepped up to take over. I ran it for a couple of years. Some other people took over. It's the kind of thing you can burn out on,
I bet.
Shocked.
Yeah,
Shocked, I tell you. Really?
Yeah, it's got a lot of people in it, doesn't it?
it does.
It seems like an enormous amount of work on your spare time. It's like, now I gotta get home and run spreadsheets and organize stuff and talk to a bunch of attractive people that don't like to leave their house.
Yeah.
And then promise them, make them promises, make sure that they're cool. Oh, yeah.
That sounds exactly like us.
Well, you.
100%. Like, that is 100% Happy Jacks.
And then imagine, but also camping out.
Yeah.
And then,
In the
running
rain.
around the woods and hitting people with boffer swords.
So
That's the good part.
Fair.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So,
really fair.
what are you running and playing right now?
I'm actually between games at the moment.
Oh, well said. Oh, I like that. It's a good phrase.
I'm an officer without
games.
portfolio. Recently, I was running a game that Chris,
that.
Tiny Viking, and Bruce Penner were in. That was a D&D 5th edition Viking epic saga.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
So
I like Vikings.
yeah.
I like
So that was
Right? Two great tastes that go great together.
Together.
You like 5th edition?
love it.
Yeah.
It's the most fun I've had playing D&D since I was 8.
Well said. Well said. That's a T-shirt.
There you go. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Let me get to my shit.
Yeah, there's a thing. Blurb.
In this episode,
No, come on.
Oh.
Kimmy used to do this thing with
Sorry.
blurb, blurb. She doesn't do it anymore.
in this episode,
It's not the blurb time yet.
we'll discuss grokking your PC or NPC. Bobby from Belgium.
That's actually a word.
Bobby from Belgium.
That's the thing.
One word.
Bobby from Belgium asks.
Grokking is a word.
It is. It is. Bobby from Belgium.
No,
Really?
We're still
It's
working
only
on
funny the third time. Asked for some tips running a game over Skype, and the Reverend Dr. Johnson sent a brief love note, and Minnesota Dice something. I only wrote half his name. His name is not Minnesota. I'll find it. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Minnesota Dice Tosser
Nice.
sends a confession and a horror story. Yay! But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. It's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, and we're on the Facebag. HappyJacksRPG.
Really, if you just Google Happy Jacks RPG,
You'll get
You're the first result.
And we're on the YouTubes.
Turns out we are.
And we're on the Twitches, which you may
we
or
might
may
even
not
have a
be watching
LinkedIn profile.
No.
I don't think so.
Happy Jacks RPG looking for viewers.
No.
Here are our qualifications.
I don't think that's it.
We should get one.
I don't need any more things.
Oh, man. We got knocked way down.
But, we... for
One,
what?
2, 3. We're the fifth thing now, or fifth thing if you Google RPG podcast.
Right, but a couple of the things that are above us are lists of RPG podcasts that include us.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, one
RPG.com
two
or whatever.
are.
Yeah.
Geek and Sundry,
Well, yeah.
freaking newcomers.
Yeah.
That's right. We were here
Those
before
young
them.
whippersnappers.
Well financed.
Yes. And One Shot Podcast.
I know. I
They're
don't know
fantastic.
Yeah, they are good.
Yeah.
But
And-
the
and
other two
so
are
is Geek and
lists.
Sundry.
The other two are lists that include us.
Yes.
So I'm.
But we're still
Yeah.
on the first page,
Yeah.
which means that it's not we're not getting stalked by creepy people because only creepy people look past the first page.
No, Geek and Sundry is like the Jupiter of that, and they take all the meteors and all the hits, and then they trick us, and we get nothing.
We're Uranus.
I was going to say we're in the habitable zone. We're like Earth. We're just very safe and all that because the big guys have taken all the heat.
The one thing we can all agree on is that Pluto is a planet.
Okay, yeah,
Sure.
I was going to say a dog, but the other way. Dog. It's Mickey's dog.
Okay, yeah. But he's a. I don't know. I don't want to get into the goofy Pluto.
Well, there's Canis domesticus and Canis erectus. Canis
All right.
erectus was goofy. Canis domesticus.
So-
Okay, all right.
I'm also supposed to bring up that Dritzmas, which is
It's right there.
okay, good job.
Go.
Okay, that Dritzmas is coming up. That's our pseudo made up holiday exchange.
It's not made up. It's not made up at all. Christmas is the day after.
Somebody made it up.
Well,
So
let's
it
not
is
get
made
into
up.
that discussion because that's
It's based on canon.
I brought you a
somebody made it up for
Christmas
the canon.
present.
Oh, awesome!
It's the Black Grouse.
Ooh.
Excellent.
I figured, dark
Yes.
elf, dark whiskey. So.
Excellent.
That is acceptable.
this is for
we will
the
accept
house.
this tribute.
We'll have to. Stork will get some glasses.
Get some
in a minute.
glasses. Anyway, if you want to participate in our not made up holiday Dritzmas gift exchange, email Dritzmas DRZZ.
DRIZZT.
Sorry, it's very small.
MAS.
It's Dritz.
Should I get glasses now?
If you don't know who he is, you probably aren't listening
Sure.
to this.
And what?
And
how-
then you have to sign up by February 2nd.
What's the official pronunciation of that name? Do we know? Have we ever heard it from?
Yes.
Depends which nerd you're talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
I always pronounced it Dritz,
The-
but people pronounce it Drizzt.
Yeah.
Dritz. Oh.
Not,
Drizzt.
or Drizzit. I mean,
It could
I've
be.
kind of done it
I would want an
multiple
I
ways.
between the Z and the T if I was going to pronounce it Drizzit.
yeah.
But that's me. But yeah, there's.
But
I hear
maybe
all
that
kinds.
second Z is like a Y sometimes.
Oh, it
Is
could be like
you know what I mean?
Welsh.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
two. Oh, thanks.
I add vowels because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Why did I didn't have a
I don't-
glass?
I want to.
That's yours.
Is there a smaller glass? Can I have a smaller glass?
That is. That's the smallest I can find.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can tell this is really
There's
top
a
notch.
actually, if you want to get me, there's a bag right next to, right above those, and there's small mason jars in
I have
there.
to admit that that's one of those words that I've read so many times and I'm so familiar with
These
from
are for
reading.
drinking with, right?
Sure. Well, they're also for preserving stuff, but you can drink out of them.
It's okay. I wasn't.
Am I ruining your bug on
No, not at all.
Whiskey is a preservative.
It's my,
It
it's
is.
my,
Here,
you
can pour me a
prepper.
drink.
This is my prepper
Since they're
cave.
talking over me, so you can pour me a drink.
I see that now.
So,
a lot.
anyway, but that's one of those words that I've read so many times
Yeah.
that sometimes I'm afraid to say it out loud because I'm really familiar with everything, but I've never actually said it out loud. I've just read it a million times.
Right.
I didn't mean
Thank
to
you,
open
sir.
a.
So it's like there's a lot of names from Tolkien that I'm like, I know everything about that person, but you ask me to say their name out loud, I'm like,
Right.
don't know.
So basically it's February 2nd
You have to.
is
You
the
have
deadline.
to. Yeah, February 2nd
register.
is the deadline to register.
So you're gonna email Dritzmas DRIZZTMAS at gmail.com, and you'll get sent some sort of form
Yeah.
to fill out. You have to fill out the form and turn it in by that time. And I think his rules for it are, and this is not, we don't do this. This is actually done by a listener, Sergito. And
I'll tell you this stuff.
but
feel like he's very organized.
yeah, he is. But you got to make the commitment that you're
Yeah.
going to give a gift because you're going to be put into a pool of people, and if you don't
Yeah.
send your gift, then someone's not getting their Christmas present.
Yeah. That's lame.
very sad.
That's lame.
very
It
sad.
ruins the made up holiday. Not made up holiday for everybody.
It's the day after the day after or the day before.
The day after St. Patrick's Day, I think. Day before, maybe.
I'm trying to remember because it was.
If you don't remember, it's probably the day after.
I'm trying to
Well
think. We
said.
did a show. I think the show was the day. It was the day after.
Yeah, because
Was-
we're
was it
usually
the day
really
after?
hungover.
Well, we're tired.
I'm an atheist. I don't celebrate anything.
Wait a minute. That's not how that works.
Yeah, right.
You celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Day before St. Patrick's
No,
Day.
I
he
just,
says.
that's amateur hour. I have a show to go do. I have to go out there and do it. But I don't
Right.
Celebrate.
Secondly, JackerCon 14, which is a virtual game convention that it is also run by listeners.
Mm-hmm.
That starts March 17th and ends April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And that the title is "Been Spendin' Most Our Lives in a Subterranean Paradise," because it has a Dritz theme.
Nice.
Menza Baranza.
Nice.
You know, that's his hometown.
Is that how that's pronounced?
I believe so.
Not Menzo Berenson?
Maybe it is. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm curious about these things.
That's the way I pronounced it when I read the book. That's the way I heard it in my head.
Right.
So that's
It's
just
one of
always
those
like.
things. I think you added vowels. There's not very many vowels in that word.
The fuck there ain't.
In Menzo Baranzan, there's.
Are there?
That's how I pronounce
Right.
it internally.
But both of our pronunciations are plausible.
Yes.
Maybe it's a dialect, like
Exactly.
the northern
Yes.
Menzo Baranzanians
The northern
pronounce
drow.
it that way, with like the less educated,
Right.
Eastenders.
New Orleans and New Orleans.
My niece was talking about Legolas in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
series.
it says Davy's pronunciation is what's in the audiobook.
Okay.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah.
My niece was talking about Legolas in the Lord of the Rings things, and I went, no, actually, and then I went, I actually don't.
You know what?
know if it
Until there
isn't
was a
Legolas.
movie or an audiobook, no one knew.
It's like, no.
Actually, Tolkien made any number of recordings of.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
He just actually does, and it is. It's Legolas, but
And he has giant pronunciation guides for everything.
Yep.
Does he really?
Yep.
He
Right.
wrote languages, like really, really wrote them, like
Literally, the last half of the Return of the King is an appendix
On
on
the
language
languages.
and history.
I'm so glad I never got through 2 hours.
the whole Silmarillion.
hey, you don't have to read that part. It's not like,
It's actually fascinating.
yeah, I like that part.
I'm partial to it.
And it's it's drizzed on the audiobook, not drizzit. Drizzed.
Drizzt.
Sorry.
But no,
okay.
but he spells it exactly the same way. That doesn't help.
Yeah, really.
That's not phonetic.
No, he put an
not
I,
Drizzt, it's Drizzt.
I in it. He put an I in the second one.
Drizzed.
So anyway,
Anyway,
we're here.
JackerCon, JackerCon 14. You can go to jackercon.com if you want to run a game or you want to play in a game.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's from March 17th through April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And
They also have a Discord channel too. If you want to
Oh, they
join
do?
the
Okay. Jackercorn.
the JackerCon Discord server, which I'm sure there's a link somewhere on their website, possibly.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
If not, it will probably be there by the time you look.
And it's a very fancy webpage that they put up.
Really?
Yeah, someone knows how to like program and shit. Yeah.
It looks better than the actual Happy Jacks page.
I don't know if it looks better.
More functional.
You could go in and register and then
It's shockingly
put games
efficient
in and yeah.
for what you would expect. You go there and you're like, oh, this is going to be like, oh my god, it's an actual web page.
That's
with stuff.
amazing.
Well,
We should link the thing.
I believe it's probably DT Pints, and he's stuck up in Alaska with.
No, he's not the one that made it.
All
He's
right.
not the one that made the webpage. Someone else made the webpage. I can't remember who made the
Well, well done, whoever did.
Stu's really smart. He's like, it doesn't look better than our page because Kimmy makes our page and people get offended if I say it does, but... That's
Michael Kent is the guy that developed it. I don't know what his handle is on the forum.
Oh.
Oh, and Kurt Potts designed it. So, there you go.
Well done.
I wanted to talk about getting into character. Not just getting into character, but really understanding who your character is. Because I was talking to Gina after it was some game. And we had just played the first Vampire Dark Ages game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd mentioned to her that that's the first time I've walked in and sat down at a table and had a very clear idea who my character is.
Right.
A lot of times, I don't know, it's different for different people, I assume.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, regardless of how complicated the character creation system is or how much backstory it gives you, sometimes you don't really know what the personality of the character is.
Totally,
you know what I
totally.
mean?
Sometimes it takes a couple of games to totally
Right.
to figure it out, and you're floundering. And
But in the vampire game, I sat down right away and I knew who this guy was. And Gina had mentioned the same thing. She said, I had the exact same experience. I sat down and I knew exactly who my character was.
Interesting.
that's cool.
And I'm racking my brain trying to figure out why that is, because that would be, if I could figure out what it is that makes my understanding of that character different than the understanding of almost every other character I've ever played initially, it would make it so much easier to play good NPCs. Because NPCs, I mean, you basically, NPCs are way more throwaway than a PC. You got a PC, you're going to come up with its personality and all this stuff. You know you're making some decisions you're going to have to live with for a while,
Yeah.
right? Because you know how does my character see the rest of the party, or how does my character deal with the politics of the world, or all of these things. What does he think about mages and all this stuff? You're going to be in for the long haul with that. But for an NPC, as GM, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that NPC, you may make some bizarre decisions about what his or her outlook on life is. But you don't even have to live with it for a scene or two. You know, the recurring character might come back once in a while.
Right.
But it'd be really nice if you could actually have something, whatever that magic brass ring is, that allows you to say, oh, that's this guy. Here's these notes. This is how I portray this character. This is who this character is, so I can get my mind around who he is. So when he's reacting to the rest of the party, his reactions just completely just flow out of me as, oh no, this is how this guy would react. Because like when I'm playing Gregaro the Gregarious Gangrel, I know exactly what he's. I know, and maybe this is a clue into it. I know what his long-term plans are. I know what he wants out of life, and where what he thinks about his station in life right now, and what it should be in the future.
Right.
And maybe that's a part of it. Maybe that's part of where that comes from.
Sorry.
Good.
Do you think that you would have been able to jump into that character as much before we played Mode of Sin? Do you think your familiarity with the universe and
knowing setting? Well, it's a different setting because it's medieval.
Yeah, but it's the same. Like Mode of Sin was very much okay. We're breaking all the rules of the conservative traditional vampire, so you had to know all those rules. Yeah, so before you broke them.
There's no Camarilla in Dark Ages. It hasn't been invented yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
right.
That's amazing.
There's a few little guidelines for vampires, but it's not the 9 traditions or whatever.
Yeah, there's
it is.
no enforcing mechanism.
Oh,
no. The enforcing mechanism is your sire.
Yeah.
That's it. Or
cool.
if your peers decide you're being a dick, they might come out after. Or the prince.
Or peasants with pitchforks.
There's always that danger too, and that's probably the scariest of them.
Lunch.
But what do you like when you guys are either playing characters or coming up with NPCs? What kind of stuff do you note about the characters, and what kind of stuff do you think helps you portray that character more realistically, or makes them more of a person than just a card with a name on it and maybe some stats?
It's really funny you bring this up today because I was driving home today in the rain. I'm stuck, and I had this epiphany. And it's seriously, it just happened, and then you got this topic. I was sitting here thinking about the difference between actors taking on a role and what we do taking on a role. Right? And we say that they're very similar. I often say that they're very similar.
Pay. That's
we pay. Exactly. Sort of. Here's kind of the difference. An actor taking on a role, they have a script, and there's lines, and there's scenes, and then what they have to do is they have to find a reason to be doing what they're doing and say those lines and give them importance. They have to find a reason to or whatever it is to make those lines. Sometimes it's just saying a line, but sometimes they actually have to find a way to say it that makes it sound important for them.
And so there's some sort of
what they
intellectual consistency within the character.
Their character has an arc. Their character has a story, and they have to find a way in that story to make that important for them so that they can deliver those lines with some gravitas or import.
Right.
Whereas we have the opposite problem. We have a skeleton of a character with sort of disads, some problems and stuff, and we actually have to find a thing to do. or a motivation. So an actor's looking for a motivation to try to figure out how to justify their lines. We're trying to find... We have motivations, but we don't have lines. So we're trying to actually come up with things to do within that framework of our mistakes. Or our ads and disads. I had this so much better phrased in my car ride home.
For me, I think the motivation is the stumbling block for me. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases.
It's the flaws.
Well, Stu, when you make a character, do you sit down and figure out stats first, or do you think up the story of your character first?
I very rarely play. I probably have only, in the last 5 years, probably made characters that I've personally played maybe 3
NPC
or 4
or
of them.
PC?
Well, NPCs, the first thing I'm thinking of is what's their place in the story?
Yeah.
What is this guy going to do? Then from that informs what kind of stats I'll give them. But I look for what their function is, what their intended function is in the game first. Or sometimes I'll just come up with an idea for a character. There's one NPC that's going to show up in the L5R game who's a crab, and I wanted to make kind of an oddball crab who's still a crab, but is just a little different than the regular crab. Way different than your character.
Very suspicious.
Right. But, and that, I don't really have a place for him in storyline, like in the continuity of what I think the story might be. He doesn't have a place for it, but he could be helpful. I made him. I'm definitely going to introduce him to the party because I kind of like the concept behind him. And there again, that's one of the characters I think I will have an easy time portraying. Because for whatever reason, I had a real firm idea of who that character was. But when I sat down and made Gregare, I didn't. I knew I wanted to make a gangrel, and I wanted to make a gangrel from Scotland. Because I can't do any, I don't do European accents very well. I mean, I can do a German accent, but it always turns into Russian, or if it's Russian, it turns into German. I don't want to do a French accent, because French accent, I did one in the, well, it wasn't really French, that was Quebecois.
That was so fun.
French.
Right, but Scottish is a fun accent, and I figured Scottish gangrel, that goes together like dwarf and Scot,
Yeah.
It does. But I didn't really have a concept for him. I sort of built the character first, and then I kind of worked on his backstory a little bit. And it was kind of through the backstory that I kind of figured out who he is. That and the path I chose, because that's one of the mechanics. Well, you played Vampire.
Yeah.
You have humanity. You have paths in the modern
In
Knights.
modern, it's the Sabbat have paths and the Camarilla have humanity.
Have humanity.
Yeah.
In Dark Ages, there's roads and paths, and you pick a road. My road is humanity, and my path is Path of the Breath, which there again I made a character who's kind of an oddball gangrel, because the Path of the Breath, one of the tenets of it is you seek out the company of other people because having human contact helps maintain your humanity. So, and gangrels are very typically loners. I mean, it even says that, I think, in the
numerous times,
in the 20th anniversary.
Numerous times.
So I wanted to make someone who can't be a loner. It's against his morality to be a loner, and that pushed me, I think, into figuring out what he thinks about his lot in life and where he sees himself going. And I think that to me, for portraying an NPC, is the important part. It's not necessarily personality, but more worldview.
Yeah.
Because everyone sees the world a little differently.
Yeah.
And how he sees the world, for me at least, when I'm portraying the character and he's reacting to the other player characters, that to me is a more useful reference when trying to determine how he's going to react to what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I actually had a bunch of fun when we were doing our L5R character creation with the 20 questions thing, because I find it very similar. It
begs a lot of those questions, too. It asks,
absolutely.
What do you think about this? What do you think about this?
Yeah,
Well,
and I think it's really important when you're coming up with your PC to have, you might develop some of it as you go. Things may change, but at least have that history and have what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your character going to do before they get talked into going on this adventure? What would they be doing if they weren't on this adventure? Because that really speaks to who they are.
Right.
So, and I think really like nailing that down, that's one of the first, and that's one of the reasons I love coming up with characters like at the table with other people, because then you can kind of riff off of each other and make connections and things like that. But I think that more than anything else informs what the PC is and why there's depth there. Because otherwise, if you make, your character and you're just like, I don't know, we always make fun of the everybody's dead, I'm never going to do anything, I hate
no
it.
family.
Yeah, I have no family. It's like, all right, if that's all you are, then that doesn't leave much to work with. That doesn't leave, Batman is not interesting until he's got Alfred and Dick Grayson and other people he cares about around him. So that's what makes these characters interesting. So coming up with that little, even if it's not like a ton of past, a little bit of past and a little bit of future, which will probably not last very long because PC characters always go off the rails, really gives, something to work with.
Right.
I actually was going to say, Stu, that in this last medicine, especially in the last year, I've watched your NPCs take on amazing personalities. There was Calvin.
Oh, yeah.
And there was the.
Well, Calvin was just a chance to flirt with Jesse.
Yes, but still, I watched you play 2 or 3 NPCs back to back, and you did the eye roll, and suddenly you were that guy. The eye roll again, and then suddenly you were the next guy. Yeah. Well, no, you were like Calvin and everything. Hi.
Right.
And then in the who was the guy that was the drug addicted vampire that was living in the asylum?
Um.
Right. And then you were like, and suddenly you took them on too.
Yeah.
You've had a lot more practice recently.
Darren Crossgrave.
Yes,
Crossgrave,
so you've
yes.
had, and I watched you switch back and forth between NPCs because we put you in positions where you weren't talking to yourself, but you had to play multiple NPCs. And I watched you switch, and you didn't waver. You somehow made a note to yourself about what NPC'd have what, and you were juggling. I'm going to say 11 NPCs.
Yeah.
10 to 11 NPCs, and you kept
Like
them
that would
all
show
separate.
up regularly? Yeah, maybe.
And you
maybe,
kept them all separate.
Maybe that may.
And you really flexed a muscle on us. So I'm thinking that part of this might actually be that you've gotten really good at maybe exploring new personalities. The other thing, you're kind of a contrarian, so it's like, I'm not going to play the loner gangrel. I'm going to play a gregarious gangrel.
Right.
But I think that you have gotten more comfortable, especially in Vampire, because you're really familiar with the backstory, with the history, with the motivations of the clans.
Most
that
listeners would
you can
disagree
play
with
around
you.
in it. Well, but by being aware of all of that stuff, you are now able to break the rules, or at least flex them and play around.
Right.
I think we're all at a disadvantage when we start a game because we don't really know. So we latch onto something and we hold on to it, and then as the game goes by, I know with L5R, with Masashi, I'm like, oh, man, I maybe should have made better choices early on.
Well, you didn't make
but
your
I didn't
remember the
know.
characters. Those original characters were pre-gens. You
That
guys are
was just
screwed
that
because
was
I
just-
made all the
That
characters.
was just a box of stats. We still imbued
Right.
them with
Yeah.
personality.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I think that
Because that didn't really exist. Well, there was a 21 question thing, I think, in 4th edition, but I don't think we did it.
no, we didn't. Because we were like, I didn't expect to live past like the second or
The
third.
one thing,
I
yeah.
really didn't.
I think, too, one of the things that Stork's kind of keying on is, and one of the reasons, at least for me and Stork said earlier, as you get to know the character, I think one of the things that happens, and that you had with those NPCs, is that you start to get the voice, and you start to get the mannerisms of the character.
Right.
So when you first sit down at the table, I usually try to pick a voice before I come sit down, but it takes a little while for it to really settle in. I know with Interpol X recently, I'm doing the Russian accent thing, which I'd done for emails and
Right.
stuff before. But the first session, I was kind of okay, I know the accent, but what is her, cadence? How does she reply to things? Is she sarcastic? Is she, just bone dry? Does she not get jokes? It's you start to get to know these things so that you then can more easily and more readily reply in that character's voice.
Because I saw Calvin evolve, and he was just an NPC.
Yeah.
And you start getting those things you get your shtick where you're flirting with Jesse all the time, and or you get the good news or whatever it is that's that character's
That hook.
thing. Yeah, exactly. That lets you snap into that.
Isn't that kind of superficial, though?
No.
Well-
it isn't, because it's something to hold on to when you start. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you guys are Babylon 5 fans, but
I saw all but most of the last season.
so Londo Mollari was one of the main characters. This
Be
is
it
like-
you in something in Assassin of Joy. You know.
And I saw a great interview with Peter Jurassic, the actor who played him, who said that he had the hardest time getting into character as Londo until he realized that his way in was to yell at Garibaldi. And so he would put the costume on and be ready, and then he would go, Garibaldi! And then he had it, and he was in, And that put him in the not just the voice, but the mindset. Right? And so although it's a superficial step,
No.
but it leads to a more three-dimensional
No,
character.
that's totally an acting thing.
Yeah.
But that's like I'm saying, actors are starting with a disadvantage because they already know the character arc. They actually have to find motivations for what the script says they're doing. We as role players have the opposite problem. We get kleptomaniac, paranoid, schizophrenic, and then we have to then within that box now come up with motivations that now we have to live with.
Right.
It's a blessing and a curse. But we ended up with a broader thing, but we actually have to find things and ways to say it, as opposed to actors which already know what they're going to say. They have to find a reason for saying what they're saying.
Right.
And we don't have a director sitting there giving us feedback to make it better.
Basically.
Well, yeah, and you're the writer and the actor at the same time.
And the director.
I think the key that you kind of touched on, and I guess really what I'm trying to express is when you are playing in a role-playing game, you need to be able to have the courage and the confidence to explore the flaws in your character. Mm-hmm. And you explored them with Calvin.
Yeah.
You explored them with a bunch of the other NPCs, and now you're exploring this flawed gangrel. I mean, a gregarious gangrel isn't going to live very long because he's going to say the wrong thing at some point, or the rest of the gangrels are going to go.
Well, he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
Well, no,
He's not an idiot.
No, but he's going to put himself in a position.
He's not actually intelligent. His intelligence is actually quite low. But
maybe he'll make a bunch of friends and be safer than all the other games.
But he's from a feudal society. I think that's one of the things about Dark Ages compared to modern knights. In Dark Ages, there's a feudal society and there's a vampire feudal society. You go from one to the other. You understand what the pecking order is, and you understand the importance of the pecking order,
true.
and you understand the repercussions if you decide to go against the pecking order.
In many ways, the feudal society still exists in the modern vampire, but
It does.
It's archaic, and
But
we, from modern people, don't
when
get it.
modern dude gets turned into a vampire and thrown into this feudal situation, it's like,
Yep.
what do you mean I have to do everything you say?
Yeah.
This
But
isn't
what
Britain.
about
We're
my
not a
constitutional
class.
rights?
Yeah.
It's not a class
You're
structure.
dead. You had that.
So I mean, for that particular character, like your Gangrel in my game,
Yeah.
he had a lot of trouble because he was not brought up in a feudal society. He was a porn star in the valley.
In the 70s.
In the 70s.
Where he could just do whatever he wanted.
Free love, right?
Yeah, fucking
Probably used to fly to New York and go to Studio 54 all the time.
Did whatever he wanted, shagged whatever he wanted, no consequences.
And now suddenly there's all these rules, and there's
Right.
deference to these people, and these people are above your station.
You know
and-
my character better than
Right.
I did. Why didn't you tell me that when I started? It would have helped so much.
But Stork, you're supposed to play a character, not yourself.
Nothing free about my love.
But I also think that's something that develops. Like, I think given a separate set of circumstances, starting that first day, if things had gone differently, a lot of things could have been different with Albert and his eventual story, because I think that's something that you kind of discovered about him, is that he, like, while he had, like, a rebellious nature and stuff like that, I think the kind of rebellious nature against, Adrian and stuff is something that developed because of their personality clash. If it had been, a very alpha, straightforward, prince that you related to in a different way as characters, I think that could have gone very differently.
And that was kind of the thing that Stu set up originally, which is like, you guys are all fairly new at this.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing, which gave us kind of let us all off the hook, because as we played the game, we all started reading stuff and went to the wikis, and eventually we're like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But Stu gave us that. The characters were basically clueless, stupid vampires that we just don't really newly embraced.
Yeah.
We played it not knowing that, I guess a good director would say, well, you're a young actress, so you get to play innocence really well, because that's what you are.
Yeah.
I contend that Albert, if we were going to talk about characters, would have been a jerk for most of everything anyway, because as Stu said, he was brought up in a completely different age and was stuck in it. He had problems to begin with. He was Arrested Development. I mean, he was a 17-year-old guy from the 70s stuck in that.
See, I feel if Sebastian had been his prince,
no, perhaps.
that would have been totally different. But him and Adrian were just so different. They were like polar opposites of the spectrum.
But we're not. This isn't about that. This is more about Stu's character.
Right, but
No,
it's about
it's
character
about
development.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important point. And I know for a fact, like when I played Layla, I could not have played Layla when we first started playing Vampire.
Oh no, you didn't know enough about the setting. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I didn't know everything about the setting, but just I think your familiarity with the system and the familiarity with the culture of the people in the system, whether that's something the GM has created or whether it's like an actual setting book for D&D or something like that, I think that can profoundly influence how your characters develop.
Right.
And a game like L5R and a game like Vampire and Werewolf, to a certain extent, you are encouraged to explore the brokenness of your character. I don't know a lot of role-playing games that do that.
Well, but
probably name
story
one
is story is conflict, right? And
Yes.
and so when you put a disadvantage on your character sheet, you're essentially signaling the GM, this is the conflict I'm going to have.
Yes.
So that's basically
But-
the story I
absolutely.
want to have.
But D&D doesn't do that.
Which is really one of the failings of D&D, I think.
And RuneQuest and...
I mean, D&D doesn't like put it in there mechanically,
Right.
But I would also argue that old L5R didn't put it in there mechanically. Like the new L5R beta, like you're we've got the new things where you kind of.
I don't remember. Did they have disadvantages in 4th? I thought it did.
Yeah, but I mean,
In
it's
first
not.
edition they had it.
But it's not like mechanically put in there.
Yeah,
Like,
it
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I just don't remember.
You get
rolling
extra
it.
points at character creation
I think
by
so.
taking
I
disadvantage.
don't want a mechanic.
Right, but I mean, like when you're rolling the dice, like the new beta system, you actually have like you start getting strife and stuff like that as you go.
Yeah,
I'm
they've
sorry.
got- they're-
I wasn't clear about the mechanics of
Their
it.
dice
I see,
mechanics
I
are
see.
bleeding
Sorry.
into role playing.
No, it's okay. Don't apologize. I wasn't clear. But
Which some people like and some people don't.
That,
Right.
that
I'll
might
just
be a
put it
whole
there,
other
leave it there.
topic, but I
It is a
actually
whole
have a
other
problem
topic.
with that myself.
Yeah.
but
Well, go on,
yeah,
sorry.
but while I mean, and then a whole other kind of discussion where you're like, okay, like I would take disadvantages, like I take it disadvantages and create disadvantages for my characters in D&D, despite not getting extra points. Like that, then,
Right.
like, should you have to be kind of bribed by adding disadvantages? So
Well, I mean, that's
that
where
are
almost-
interesting role playing opportunities to get more points.
If that's the people that are at the table and want to play that kind of game, then
Yeah.
no, you don't.
Right.
But if you go to a random convention game and sit down with your,
Yeah.
deeply flawed sorcerer who changes who he is from minute to minute, that's my
What? Wait a
character.
moment.
Bill Roper.
And you didn't take any of the utility spells
Right.
because you wanted to play a cool character.
Yeah.
And then you just do a dungeon crawl with a bunch of grognards who want to roll dice. And don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for just doing a dungeon crawl and rolling dice.
Yes.
Love it. It could be tons of fun. But those things will conflict.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Your sorcerer's going to walk down the wrong hallway.
That's right.
And it's going to jeopardize
Stupid
the entire
ass.
party.
Everybody.
All right.
And then you move to
That's an
5th
oddly
edition
specific
from 4th
example
edition.
because that was the character I was playing and the rest were grognards.
Okay.
We were not.
That was my first 5th edition
100%
character.
not.
Relative D-Pod
I
brought up
actually. Oh, go ahead.
brought up something interesting. Sadly, there are also those people who will choose flaws based on the most points / lowest drawback.
Right?
Masters.
Yeah.
And that just remind what is the Steve Jackson quote from GURPS? If a disadvantage is not a disadvantage, it's not a disadvantage. Something like that.
Yes.
It's very Yogi Berra.
I loved that game so much because when the old 4th edition game that we didn't record, nobody's ever heard it. It got us all back.
Oh, the
into
D&D
it.
4th edition game, yeah.
Like, I mean, it was crazy. A big learning curve for everybody involved.
11
with all
players.
11 players.
Playing fourth
Fourth
you
edition.
ever play fourth?
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
The longest
didn't know.
combats ever.
We had no idea until combat ensued, and then Stu is like, he's got chips, food, everything. Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, God.
I mean,
We learned.
old man and almost playing until dawn.
Yeah.
It's like,
It was
what the
long.
hell?
And we had some WoW players in there too, so they were just.
And they
Just
totally
the
picked it
one-
up.
Oh, yeah.
Totally picked
That
it
was a
up,
different-
though, because, I mean, it's built.
4th edition was perfect for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people
Great
jumped
gateway
in.
drug for role-playing games for
100%.
for
Until
WoW
But
players.
you mean at a
If you're,
point.
if you're an MMORPG player,
Fourth
D&D
edition's
4th
amazing.
edition is basically that at a table.
It was.
It
was.
Yeah.
It's the
By
engine
design.
of it. Yeah.
By design.
Yeah.
It was until your sorcerer walks down the wrong hallway because all the rest of the people
No,
were
that,
playing,
because
playing
that
their
happens in
build
WoW too.
cleric.
Because that's when other people are screaming at you and you get kicked out
Right.
of the guild. And, right.
Leroy Jenkins.
All right.
But the rest of us were not like all min-maxy perfect characters. I'm just gonna say.
Just you.
No, I wasn't. Remember because the Raven Queen book wasn't out yet, and I played like cleric of the Raven Queen. So I actually like wrote my own splat book on the Raven Queen.
Which I never read.
I know. I realized that like third game that I'd sent you like 8 pages of this amazing like whole theology of this goddess, and then like 6 months later they came out with the actual one, and I hated the real one.
That's funny because my 4th edition character
Yeah?
was a halfling assassin who viewed himself as an acolyte of the Raven Queen, despite being told by the clerics of the Raven Queen that he definitely was not.
See,
So
I
we're
was
just
like,
randomly killing people in the name of the Raven Queen?
Well, okay. So, I'm going to talk about my character.
do it.
So the halflings were in this big caravan, right? And in this world. And if you fell behind, you died, right? So he was part
It's
of
like the Trail of Tears.
well, yeah, except, like with a little Romani mixed in, and they're halflings.
All right.
And so he followed the caravan and gave mercy killings to the people who fell behind.
Nice.
That's dark. That's dark.
See, I think
But he thought he was doing a great and wonderful service.
Yeah.
Right. They died with dignity as opposed to
And went to the Raven Queen.
Starving to death.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Or dying of dehydration.
Right,
Or
yeah.
being picked off by
It's
wolves.
like Oregon Trail meets D&D.
Right.
dysentery. Yeah, I pictured her totally as like sort of a Wiccan shaman mix, where it was like Maiden Mother Crone, and it was like the crone path is kind of like what I like. She wasn't the Maiden Mother, but she was like the crone aspect of it in my stuff, and I loved it so much.
And we all know that
so
girl.
much. I know. I was totally like the goth girl who was like, no, I can't heal him because if it's willed so.
You actually had a really good spin on death. You
Yeah,
were like,
I love
death is
that.
natural, death is normal, death
Yeah.
is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced.
Embraced
but
at
not
the time.
sought out, but when it
Yeah.
happens. I mean, and you had this whole, you really did have an interesting philosophy,
It was
because you were
super
like,
cool.
aren't you a servant of the Raven Queen? Of course, but death comes to us all.
Yeah, it's part of nature, as birth and death.
you
And
had
it was
to-
the whole thing.
it was
and
really
then it came
healthy.
and it was just so crappy and so like one-dimensional for the Raven Queen, and I was so angry. And I was like, we're not doing that. It doesn't exist in our game. And then we switched to GURPS. Is that we switched to? No, Hero.
No,
We switched
Hero
to Hero.
for
Oh,
like
God.
1 or 2
One
sessions,
day.
and then GURPS.
And then it
that-
died.
And then
Wait,
it
so
died.
you translated the same characters
Yeah.
into
Tried.
different systems?
Yeah.
It was very different.
Do you hate yourselves?
Well, because
The
4E,
combat's got so long.
Yeah.
4E was
I
clearly
thought
broken.
we'd get shorter in Hero.
Hero. That didn't happen.
Well, the problem is some of the characters got built in ways that
we're in.
completely, because
Yeah.
I basically, my rule when building a character when I'm the GM in Hero is don't have any power that changes your move, because there's a lot of game prep I have to do with move, because you know how the initiative works in that game.
Yeah.
It's like Starfleet battles, but a smaller chart, like the impulses, right? So I would I would like, okay, here's the combat encounters I've got planned, and I have a bunch of extras, and I would build like a spreadsheet for each one that had round 1, these people go, round 2, these people go, round 3, right, all the way to round 12.
Which is a good thing to do with Hero, because it can get complicated.
Right.
Yeah.
But
On the
then
fly.
it got sprung on me that one of the characters had a buff power that would give like +2 to everyone's speed within a certain distance. And I'm like,
Well,
I remember your
That
face.
just- I was-
like the
that just
first
ruined my
combat, and that person was explaining, and you're just like,
it amazes
my
me.
face looks really disappointed and upset for anyone listening on the podcast.
It amazes me that we could play that game, Hero System, run that game, no problem, and yet I failed calculus in college. So
so did I.
It's about dedication and interest.
exactly,
I got a D. I think I got a D. But yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
did.
calculus.
I didn't really fail, but it bounced me out. of
And
being a
Stu's
physics
intentions
major.
were correct, because 4E was clearly broken at that point. So he's like, well, let's try another
We started
system
getting up
where-
to like 8th level or something.
and it's like, you guys are
sounded
high level
longer and
characters, so let's
longer.
make it a superhero game. And
Well, it's not really superheroes,
but
but
at that point we were, because we were like 10th level or something crazy, and had all these powers.
maybe
and-
8th. You were up. You were
I
starting to
think
get up
we were
there.
like 8.
Yeah,
Something
you're
like
getting.
that.
You're starting to
I
get
have
up
the
there.
card sheet somewhere. I still have the giant book I wrote too. So if anyone wants to play a really cool take on the Raven Queen, maybe you can read it since nobody's ever read it. except
No one's
me,
ever
evidently.
Reddit.
Reddited it.
But
I should totally put it on Reddit.
But see, what I wanted,
Yes.
what I wanted to do was
Download it
take character concepts and translate them into another system,
Yeah.
not the mechanics
Yeah,
and
yeah.
translate them into another system. And what happened was some of the characters, the mechanics got duplicated from 4th edition D&D into Hero, which was not what my intention was.
And-
when we
and-
moved it to GURPS,
I had a pro build my character, and he clearly built it broken, or maybe maximized anyway.
well, yeah. But and then when we did it in GURPS, it lasted a few sessions in GURPS.
Yeah.
Because I can run GURPS fast. And GURPS is pretty deadly. I mean, combats aren't going to last for a very, very, very long time. But some of the players were like, well, I used to have this power, I don't have this power anymore. I said, well, they don't really have that in the magic system.
Yeah,
so
deal.
I gave you this combination of spells, and you're doing something similar, because
That was mine.
No, it was
Mine was like that
Linnea's-
too. Like I
Linnea's
had
character.
very different powers. They still worked with like my character concept, but they were very different.
Linnea built a controller.
Yeah.
Was it
Me?
Warlock?
Warlock, yeah.
I don't.
'Cause
Were
she played a-
Warlocks controllers in 4th? I don't remember.
I believe so because they
But
were the
but
same.
it had all kinds of stuff to be able to like slow down
Yeah.
bad guys and stuff like that.
I think
And so-
because she built it, because in WoW she plays Warlock, and I think she thought it would be a DPS-y character and ended up being a controller character, so it took her a little while, if
Right.
I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
So I tried to give her spells. It's like Tanglefoot and things like that would have a similar to effect to the stuff that she was doing.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And plus 11 players is too many. We should go into the emails. What do you want to read? Since you're a guest, you want to read the first email?
Okay.
Skype gaming
take a
help from
discussion,
Bobby
though.
in Belgium, huh?
I like that discussion.
Yeah.
And yeah, go us.
Okay. Dear Stu and Co., long-time listener, first-time writer. Thanks for doing what you do. Now take a well-earned drink.
Huzzah! Thank you for writing.
Yeah.
Belgium really is the capital of excellent drink, by the way. My question is this.
I don't believe you. They should send us beer to prove it.
You're right.
Yeah.
And chocolate and French fries.
Chocolate.
If they're from Belgium, are they Belch fries?
Yes.
There is no.
We have enough
There is no
Belching.
shortening for Belgium, is there? I think Monty Python went on this. It's like the
Yeah.
French, but
Big
the
fat
Belgian,
bleeding Brussels, yep.
Let's just call them the Belch.
The sprouts.
Sprouts.
Well, but the problem is, are they Flemish or are they Walloon?
I'm vetoing
So-
like more Belgian.
I can solve this.
Gotcha.
All right, continue reading.
What tips and ideas do you have for running a session via Skype? Some background, I'm originally from England but now live in Belgium. Last year, some old school friends flew over to visit and I managed to get them hooked on Pathfinder. In fact, this was my first GMing experience and it was your podcast that helped me to get it done. So thanks again.
Nice.
We've since met up at Christmas for a second session and now plan to run a third session remotely. My 3 friends will be in one room in England and I'll be GMing for them via Skype. As we only play about twice a year, I aim to run our sessions in a convention-like style, to have a relatively linear story, and to have an interesting set piece towards the climax. One of my friends has a projector, so I can make full use of the screen where appropriate.
Nice.
I'm keen to run the session Theater of the Mind style with a few visual prompts. My current plan is to have a world map and zoom in, draw on it to show their progress as they travel from one city to another. So I'm looking for fun encounter ideas and a nice set piece for the climax of the session. An idea I think might work well would be to travel to a besieged city, find a way to sneak in, retrieve a MacGuffin, then try to escape while an army storms the city. Alternative ideas and or suggestions to flesh out this idea would be extremely welcome. Thanks again, Bobby from Belgium. P.S. Don't worry if you don't get to this in time. I'm sure any pointers you could give would be very helpful for future sessions. P.P.S. In case it comes up, I've looked into using Roll20 and similar systems, but for whatever reason it doesn't quite work for me, so the plan is to stick with Skype, at least for now. P.P.P.S. Drink.
Drink. Huzzah!
I had an epiphany not too long ago. Another one.
Another one. You have many.
Driving or peeing?
I might have been peeing. Because you can come up with good ones when you're peeing.
He takes a while.
And I was, yeah, it's like 20 minutes.
He gets it all fleshed out and there's notes on the wall and everything.
Seriously. It occurred to me that oftentimes we set combats in the most boring places. The town square. An inn.
A tavern.
A rooftop. Why don't we just have a little bit more creativity and put it like in the dockyards, in the cargo hold? How about in the transportation stockyard, where they were, or like maybe in the middle of the stables. Put it someplace slightly unique and interesting where people can use the environment and the environment can interact with them. And it's also an interesting place where they can maybe have different. A warehouse is boring. Why don't you put it in a university auditorium? Same kind of dynamics.
I think it depends on what time in your life you are.
It does. It does. I'm look. It was just off the top of my head. But perhaps you could put it in a coliseum, an empty coliseum, or a stadium, as
A
opposed
warehouse
to
of
just a warehouse.
explosives is not boring.
No, that's boring. We've been there. We've seen that happen in all the Marvel movies and you know many times before. Put it in a subterranean parking garage, or find something unique, just a little bit of a twist, so that it allows your players to. First of all, the environment's different and unique. It's not just a rooftop. It's not just the middle of the street. There might be things that they could utilize, and it keeps it fresh for everybody. It's like, oh my God, we're in a completely different world, a completely different idea. How do I utilize what we've got here?
Well,
go ahead.
Pathfinder doesn't do it, but D&D 5th edition does, where there's officially rules for like monster lair encounters, where the monsters get extra powers because they're in their lair. So, I mean, building on your idea, throw in some encounter powers that the baddies can use, but the good guys can use too once they figure it out.
That's right. Especially since you're playing Pathfinder, yeah.
I think the challenge with that...
5th edition.
Not the challenge with 5th edition, but the challenge with having it in not kind of traditional places for an online game specifically is that it is going to be theater of the mind. And when Freya and I ran our first Wild Towns game ages ago, even though it took place in a high school, we realized about halfway through the game, it was a con game, that everyone was picturing their high school.
Oh,
so
sure.
when we were describing, and I know I've told this story before, when we were describing, okay, you run out to the football field, everyone had a different way in their minds. Some people were passing the pool, some people were passing the gym or the theater department. Like, it makes it very different. So, like, when you are thinking of those places, you need to, like, it sounds like you have, like, a projection thing set up, which I love because I'm a teacher and projectors are great.
Have a map.
Yeah, have the map there.
Yeah.
Really make sure that that stuff is easily seen, like what it is. So if you are having it in a little bit different place, make sure that all those things are on your picture that they can see, or that they have a printed out copy too that they can really look at so they know what they're working with.
I'll never forget running a Savage Worlds. We were doing a freak show, and it was taking place in a vineyard. An old vineyard, so all the wines are all withered and everything, and so everybody had this picture of a vineyard, and Bill finally says, "Can you give us a map or at least some terrain?" And I thought that phrase, "just give us some terrain," was really an epiphany for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, because they want to know where they stand, they want to know what they can hide behind, they want to know what they have to work with.
Yeah,
that's a fair thing. So it's cool to have it in a vineyard. But don't not give them a map afterwards, too.
Right.
Give them so that they know where they stand, so they know what they're working with, so they know their boundaries.
Yeah.
Now, I got these notes a couple days ago, and so I was thinking about this for Bobby.
You did the homework?
I did the homework.
You did?
Nice.
And so, Bobby, here's what I thought of for you. Get one of your buddies who's going to be in the room to be a shill. Like not necessarily give away a whole lot of secrets information to him, but have him carry like a recorder or a laptop or something that he can trigger sound effects in the room without the other characters knowing that he's up to it. Or,
text him and say, play number 1.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or, like, God forbid you get, like, a fog maker or something like that. Like anything that can put you atmospherically in the room without the players expecting it would be, I think, the tits. But, yeah.
The one thing, since he's playing very theater of the mind, I would almost wonder, since he went to school with all these people, they probably are very familiar with the school.
Yeah. Well, very good point.
Areas in the hometown.
Yep.
So he might be able to say, okay, you're in a tavern, and the tavern is sort of laid out by such and such pub just down the street from this.
Yeah.
The Winchester.
The Winchester. And so all of them in their heads are in that
now
place because they all have that common experience. That's 100%. That's like when we ran the Dead Rain game. We set it in Los Angeles. It's like, okay, you're going down the 60 freeway. You're passing the whatever mining company, and
really helpful to everyone but me.
Right. Well, yeah, you're from.
No, it's because I'm
Funtucky.
the person who's lived in LA for years, and I still use my Google to go everywhere. That's how I am. I have terrible directions.
All right. So your Ghostbusters game that took place in Disneyland, and we all knew.
That I knew. I could describe exactly.
You actually well
at many points. Especially when you were going through the Haunted Mansion and you had like the ghosts
the things in the wrong order. Right.
So that's funny. I ran a Harry Dresden game in Disneyland.
Oh yeah. What'd you use Did you use the Dresden Files?
Yeah,
game?
it was when the first edition rules came out, which turned out to be incredibly clunky. And I have a friend who might be listening to this, Max. Shout out to you, who absolutely loves the Fate system. But I'm not a fan.
Yeah. I'm playing it tomorrow for the first time. There's a one shot tomorrow. Watch it 4 p.m. Okay.
4 p.m.
Yeah.
I had to bow out. I have to work.
Yeah.
I'll be in there mixing and editing.
Yeah.
All weekend. All right. Is that it for Bobby? Go ahead.
These are all really, really good things. I mean, but the bottom line is you also are confined by your technology. You need to be able to figure out something that you can do that you're comfortable with. I mean, the maps and all this stuff and the prep is really, really cool. But also don't get too caught up in railroading your characters. If you come up with a map of your vineyard and map the whole entire thing out and then they make a left turn and you don't get to it, you're stuck with all that prep that you're never going to be able to present.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance that you need to be careful with, which is over prepping and making sure that you have that really wonderful set piece and not being flexible enough to go with where your characters.
Yeah.
Well, and he's got this idea right in there. He's got the MacGuffin, right?
Yep.
The thing they need. Well, Bobby gets to decide where that MacGuffin is, and so whatever left turns the players take, they're probably going to end up there at some point.
If you're a good GM, you can always steer it back to the MacGuffin. I mean, you guys are holding the MacGuffin. People are, but I worry, especially because you're working on these presentational pieces, that you're not going to get the bang that you think you might. I guess what I'm saying is, be prepared to be disappointed, or that all your prep might not be as appreciated as you thought. I'm not saying that it won't. I'm really hoping that your reveal will be awesome. But you are setting up a multimedia event that may or may not come off the way you expect.
And lay the seeds for your future encounters in this one.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And the guy's got 6 months to prep. He's going to over prep.
Yeah.
No GM is not going to over prep.
Yeah. With
Game
6 months.
was it twice a year? He said.
Yeah.
Is how often they play.
Yeah.
So he's going to over prep.
Yeah.
He could be like me. I've got like 6 months until the next convention.
And the day before.
The day before, I'm like, oh God, now I have a good idea. And then, yeah.
Shit, I need to take my printer to the hotel.
Here's a way you can control that, and it's what we do at Con Games, is make a set of scenes. Make like 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 scenes. And what we mean by that, and we've talked about it before, which is, here's a scene that takes place in the vineyard with a bunch of wolves, right? And here's another scene that takes place in a castle, and you have to get in, and you have to talk to the guards. And here's a scene that takes place in the castle, and you can pull one out if things are going wrong, or you can shorten it if they're not getting the clues or whatever. But you make it a series of scenes, and that way you have a bit of control over the overarching story. You can get to where you're going, and you can pull them out and shorten them and elongate them as you wish. But that way, you as a GM, you can work on each one of those scenes and leave them kind of open-ended for the characters to mess around in them. And you can pull the scenes out and put them in as you go. Yeah. That's really the only advice I can have, because you have 6 months, and it's the only way that you can shape the game that I think you're going for.
But with only one night to play,
right?
Yeah.
You got to bear in mind that everything your players do is going to take 10 times longer than you think it will.
You have 6 months to prep, and they have 8 hours.
And I've GM'd a couple online games, and I've also played in a couple online games.
Good note.
I think one of the things, at least from my perspective, maybe your players are totally different. Having played an online D&D game, cool concept. I enjoyed, and this is also just kind of the player I am, but the more thought-provoking, like interaction-y, like social aspects of the game, a lot more than the combat. And that's my natural inclination with all role-playing games, but I found that was doubly true online, both as a GM and as a player, because it is kind of hard to keep track of combat, even if you're projecting the map, even if it's all there. It's hard to really kind of lock into what's happening if everyone's just kind of like describing it and there's not like that tactile thing. That could just be me. But I also kind of found that, when I GM games online, which hasn't happened a lot, but when it has, my players have also kind of preferred the like discussion and like more cerebral challenges rather than just like the fighty piece.
Mm-hmm. And also, sort of bouncing back to what we talked about earlier, make sure that your NPCs have a distinct voice, because you're just going to be a voice over Skype, or maybe video. So you're
going to be a little picture on a screen. So even all your elaborate mannerisms, they might be lost.
Yeah. So ridiculous accents, whatever. Lay it on thick, but
All right. Happy New Year from the Reverend Dr. Johnson.
I will read this one.
Okay.
Douche Bagginses. Talking reference, love it. Okay, I'll keep this short. I enjoy your podcast and actual plays more than a grown man should. With time, I'm not sure what that means, but I
do.
I'm a little nerd. I'm just gonna like just choose to not think about it. Okay, I've grown to realize
that wasn't what I was thinking of at all.
I have a dirty mind.
Can we just all say, yeah?
I need a grown up.
With time, I've grown to realize that a large part of my enjoyment is the people who do the show. Most important of all, you include and showcase women gamers, woo! Perhaps more than any other non-women-centered podcast. Bravo to the podcast. And thank you to all of the women who take part. I'm glad I read this one. I didn't do the homework, so I didn't know it was coming up. I love the Mode of Sin AP. Really sad to see it end, but 3 years is a long, long time. And good long run. Never did find out where Scully went, and do not refer me to the forum, please. What happened to him?
You're going to have to go to the forum. Everyone wrote a postscript, and they're all there.
Yeah.
And is that public? Can people see that, or they have to register?
I think they can see it without registering. So I think it's not you can't comment without registering, but I think you can go read it without registering.
Yeah, they're under the AP, and it's actually under ended. You go to the actual play forum or sub forum, and then in there is a subcategory called ended games, and it's in there.
Yeah.
It's not
in real life. Tim had actual stuff, and he chose the high road and actually went to go support his family and stuff. And then so he basically wrote a coda for Scully, and he wrote it in the forum. And in fact, we never even talked about it. We were just like, well, because in game Scully died. And we weren't even sure.
No,
back.
I never said that.
Well, we don't really know.
I never said
We
that.
just knew he disappeared. So some characters assumed he had betrayed us. Some characters assumed that he died.
I actually had not lengthy, but yeah, kind of lengthy Slack conversations with Tim about where do you think what your character do. I'm going to kind of leave it open for the party, but and then as we got near the end and we're doing the postscripts, I'm like, okay, here's what happened in the last session. And here's what I'm thinking your character may have done, because here's Calvin's postscript. I'll show it to you before I publish it. So, and then we kind of...
Yeah. The crux of the biscuit for me was that I had no idea Tim was going to post anything at all. Yeah. So Stu said, everybody write a postscript, and I go on there to post something, and there's Tim having posted it. And his
so great.
His post was as much a surprise to me, I think, as it will be to everyone else.
Yeah. 5 points to Gryffindor for the Frank Zappa reference.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Nice.
Right? You're the only one that gets it. I say crux of the biscuit, and they all look at me funny.
The crux of the biscuit, as my dog said to me,
right?
is the apostrophe.
That's right.
I still have no idea what they're talking about. But anyway, if you join our Discord, I bet someone there will probably tell you. Or if you join the chat during our Twitch streams, I bet someone there will tell you what happened if you really, really don't want to go to the forum.
The forum is actually a pretty good place.
And you could just go, if you go into that, especially
I'm trying to get him to join the Discord and the chat.
Oh.
I'm trying to get him to join the forum.
Do all the things. But anyway, shameless self-promotion.
Well, maybe people will, on Discord and, what is the other one?
The Twitch
chat. The Twitch chat will give you tidbits, but if you want the whole story...
Just tease you a little. Just tease.
So yes, you have to. And thank you for the kind words. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we're glad that you enjoyed the show more than a grown man should.
But he's got more.
Whatever that means to everybody. All right. Much love to you all. Keep talking. I'm listening. Best wishes for a Happy New Year, the Reverend Don Johnson.
Dr.
Johnson, sorry.
Don Johnson's the guy who wore the T-shirts with the suit jackets. You don't know who Don Johnson is?
Miami Vice.
Miami Vice. It was a TV show.
She doesn't.
I know
it was
a TV show.
It was the coolest TV show in the world in the 80s. No shit. It was like it was completely the shit.
It really was. It truly. Everybody just went.
Everyone had the scruffy beards and was.
And it had a Phil Collins soundtrack.
Oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
They played the whole song, and it was just shots of them in the car driving around, and they played the entire the whole thing.
Yeah, it was.
And we're all like, that's the show, the whole show, yeah.
And then it had, what's his name? James Olmos?
Edward James Olmos.
Edward James Olmos, who played that badass
detective
who had this weird backstory about Thailand and what he was doing when he in Vietnam or whatever. And it was fantastic. It was great.
It actually
it doesn't hold up.
It's actually kind of shit.
Yeah, Heavy Metal Jess says, hell no, so garbage, much awful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no.
Great Jess, my girl.
But at the time, in the 80s, it was considered, like, very fashion forward.
Oh,
well,
it was. It really
she is
was.
named Heavy Metal Jess. There's no way she's like Don Johnson. It's not in her nature. And she lives in the Northwest. I get it, Jess. I do. I didn't get it till I came down to California, and now I live here.
All right. P.S. There is no P.S. There is only Zool.
Zool.
Ghostbusters.
There's only
I've seen it.
There is no Dana.
Didn't you read the script so you'd know how it was spelled?
There is no Dana. There's only
Zool. Read the script of Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Stop making fun of me because I'm younger.
The architect was
You're such an
Shandor.
You know what? You'll have plenty of time to make fun of us when we're dead.
Or senile, which isn't that far away. It might actually be happening now.
It's a thing.
Right.
All right. BPS. Why are all you douchebagginses? Or why are you all douchebagginses? It's amusing, but where did the whole douche thing start?
The douche thing started. It was either Tappy or Stork who.
Tappy.
It might have been Tappy who called
He used that word a lot back in the day. Or that
And then
phrase.
so we started.
It was me. I remember saying, I think that we need to bring douchebag back into the vocabulary.
Maybe.
Because it had been underused.
But we started
up to that point.
either we started referring to ourselves as douchebags, or the listeners started doing it.
We started talking about
They
people
don't
as douchebags.
remember.
I
They don't
believe
know.
Kimmy actually started to embrace the douchebagginess.
But douchebaggins.
No, that wasn't douchebag.
No, that's his own take on them.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But
Yeah.
but at some point we actually started embracing the douchebagging, and I believe that was Kimmy that brought that in.
Will a what was his very early on first couple of seasons? Will a something? I bet you he's the first person to call us douchebags.
It could be.
Probably.
He's a guy I deleted from the. Remember when the forum was originally integrated into WordPress?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was not good.
And I saw his
chat room.
handle. It was like Will Azam or something like that was his.
You thought it was a Russian spam bot.
I thought it was a Russian spam bot, so I deleted his account. Then he sends an email and he's like, "Hey, you douchebags!
No,
Why did you delete my account?"
Oh, yeah.
No, he said douchebag.
He said douchebag. He did, yeah.
Okay.
We were calling ourselves douchebags before then. It was a
But,
combination.
that's early. That's like season 2.
I remember because I remember thinking douchebag was hysterical all the time, and I remember thinking we need to bring this back into the.
You know
vernacular.
what? I bet you it was that
It
video.
was in the vernacular at the time, though. That was like
Well, we're
9
old. I
years
didn't
ago.
know, yeah.
So douchebag was like that was the height
I
of
bet you it was that
douchebag.
video.
With the Funny or Die.
am a douchebag.
Yeah, that could be.
I am a douchebag.
That could be. Yeah,
I
that might have been the impetus.
am a douchebag.
That might have been the impetus.
Those guys. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that video?
You
Yep.
need to ask before that happens. That's a thing that. Yeah.
That is like the mark of a douchebag. Is the sticker on the bumper of the car?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
see,
need to ask.
No, I thought we were going douchebaggins because Frodo had his finger bitten off.
Oh, God.
So, no?
That's awesome.
I-
I'm so gonna make like in Lord
Can
of the
we
Rings.
stop doing the two? Yeah, like we should not do the two in
Sorry,
the pink,
Bilbo.
one in the state.
No, Frodo,
thing.
no,
Like,
Frodo.
No more.
The bag end shocker?
Yeah, no. Look what you've started. I blame you.
You know, he's right. It's totally. I don't know why we didn't think of that. It makes so much perfect. They're just yeah. And Kimmy's just horrified.
There's even a song.
And
about
you're
it.
right. You should ask. By the way, before you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Heavy Metal Jess says, I'm pretty sure douchebags came from a discussion about douchebags in general. Wasn't someone unaware of what a douchebag person was? And I think it was season 2.
I think that was, and I think I had to explain to that. I feel that might be what you're talking about. I feel like someone explained it to them. Or it was a really long time ago. We don't remember. We're drunk. So thank you for that question. But we don't know the answer. It's now in the mythos.
I'm sure
of
you
the
can
show.
find it on the forum.
Or go back and listen. I'm sorry, I'm going to inflict the really old episodes on you. Go back and listen. You can email us again and tell us where, in fact, we got the name douchebag.
Those old episodes are short.
I know.
The first one was like 35 or 45 minutes.
Right.
That's nothing. That's a tangent now.
And
They had
yeah,
Claire on them.
and I'm
What?
pretty sure it was in the first season, so you don't even have to go through the entire backlog.
Right.
I mean, it was like
I feel
within
like that was the thing before
6
I
or
got
7.
there.
Although your hero is talking really fast. That's back when we talked really fast.
We were
trying to
really
get to the
nervous. Yeah.
You
All
can
right.
speed those up.
PPPS. Scully lives. An addendum to my earlier email.
Yeah, he sent this later.
Yeah, it's okay. Women of Happy Jack's RPG podcast. What do you see as the 3 primary obstacles to women's participation in the hobby?
Only 3?
So-
Only
Men?
3. You only have 3.
3, I know. So, I think
Already the patriarchy is limiting what you can say.
I know.
You only get the 3.
holding me back already. Well, I mean, we had a really great discussion with this actually on Samantha's very first episode of the podcast when we did the all women episode.
That's right.
A number of seasons ago.
Yeah.
And that was actually what then led to her being invited into the vampire game.
Right.
But I think we ran into it today on Twitter, me and Samantha and a bunch of other women. Someone had posted, and I'm not going to blast accounts or anything. The sexy cosplayer girl just followed me. Her and her harem, obviously aren't real gamers. They don't look like real gamers. And it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about Samantha, but this person followed me, and I followed them. They have a Kickstarter coming up. I don't know, but so I was so I posted back and tweeted that. I was like, so what does a gamer look like? Because it's one of those things where I think that's the number one barrier is the assumptions and the things people assume about us as we're, at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, is incredibly stupid.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, if you want girls to play the game,
right.
Why on
they
earth
don't.
would you exclude attractive women based
Right.
on the fact that they're attractive? I
Right.
mean, come on,
But I
man.
think-
Attractive women scare them.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like, I mean, and there's no perfect person. You're either, you're ugly or you're too pretty. You're obviously in it for attention. Like, literally, like, whatever you look like, there is a problem with it. So it's not really about looking. It's really about the misogyny of, this is our territory. Why are you in our territory?
Right, because when was the last time you told a guy he couldn't come play the game because he didn't look right?
Right, exactly, 100%. Like, a model guy can come sit down who with, like, an 8-pack, and nobody's going to question that he's actually a gamer. And it's just one of those things where it's that is the number one obstacle, is just the sheer, like, outward appearance. And like I said today on Twitter after my crazy rant, was like, don't judge a player handbook by its cover. Like that's the number one thing. So number one, like, just that. Sorry, people are talking in the chat room. And, preach, Kimmy. I'd say number two. I mean, and I know I've told this story on the podcast before too. Like, the first time I GM'd was the Salem Witch Trials, or the first time I GM'd for not my best friends was the Salem Witch Trials game I did at the con. I was so fucking nervous. Like, I hadn't slept. Like, I was really nervous. And I'm there, and one of the guys sits down, and he just kind of looks at me. And I'm sitting there, and, like, I was nervous, so I did my hair and my makeup, and I'm there. And he's just like, and you can just see him, like, look at his buddy. And they were, like, the two people at the table, like, didn't know. And they just kind of exchanged looks, and then they kind of, like, talk about, I mean, in my head, like, I heard them, like, saying, oh, should we go? Should we stay? That could totally be, like, just what me being nervous, like, overheard and, like, translated it
Right.
to. But, like, I honestly think that they were, like, definitely nervous when they sat down and had a female GM. And they ended up having a great game, and one of them has signed up for every single con game I've done since then. So maybe it had nothing to do with that, and that was just myself.
You might actually be right.
Yeah.
I always remember that story you talked about when you, this is really early on, it was like maybe even season 1, where you walked into the gaming, this is back when they saw gaming stores, you walked into the gaming store and it was all quiet.
Yeah.
And and you had the best quote ever, which is, I know you guys are doing something before I walked in here.
Yeah. So
Please go back to doing it.
yeah, everyone wasn't standing here
Right.
staring at the door
Right.
2 minutes ago.
Right?
Master Vitor just gave me a fantastic idea.
Oh, yeah?
Read his comment.
Oh, I missed it.
You can do costumes. You could totally come up with a gamer costume.
Oh, I should make a neck
A
beard.
fat beard cosplay.
That'd be amazing. So much inspiration for that. It'd be so nail on.
I'm telling you,
Oh my God, Samantha and Mac and I.
all the way down
Oh my
here,
God, and Gina,
all the
like,
way,
we
right?
should all do, like, the fat beard
fat
cosplay.
beard.
But like this beard.
Because you're
Yeah,
still
but-
towing down to the
You gotta, it has to neck beard. All the way, you have to have a
Yeah.
total
Yeah.
neck beard.
But clean shaven.
the Harvey,
Oh, yeah.
the Harvey Weinstein
Yeah.
sort of just
Yes.
So I've only done one so far because I'm on a crazy rant.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, number 2, I would say, is the actual artwork and mechanics in the game systems.
Mechanics?
Yeah, sometimes mechanics. On the older ones, it's getting a lot better. But if you look in really old game systems, there are disadvantages for being a female character. Like, there are actual things. Like, you have a smaller thing. Especially
She's
the
not
old,
wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
old editions of D&D.
All
that stuff.
D&D had that?
Yeah.
I don't
D&D
ever recall
100%.
that D&D having
I
it.
will find it. They've had discussions about it.
Fatal aside,
Not.
Oh, God.
That doesn't count as a thing.
I will say
block that.
I will say quite honestly, I have never seen a game that differentiated between male and female characters.
Really? Okay. Well, I can.
No.
I mean, there are.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not a big reader when it comes to role-playing game books, as some
Really?
people may tell. But I mean, like, of the games that I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
Now, certainly socially,
Yes.
if they're especially if they're depicting
Right.
a specific era or something like that. But I personally think, and what I've done in the settings that I'm doing is saying, okay, you need to make a decision about, like, this game takes place in the Middle Ages.
Right. Well,
In the Middle Ages, you have very specific roles for men, and you have very specific roles for females. If you have female players who want to play female characters, you're screwing them over.
Yeah.
So either just ignore that aspect of it or make that part of the story. Make that part of the game that you're going to explore.
Dude, she's in the middle of a rant. You're interrupting.
I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Mystery Cycle in the chat room says, to Kimmy's point, it was such a big deal that it was debated in Dragon Magazine for a long time in the early days. And Jen Human says, early D&D, women maxed out at 8 out of 50 strength and men at 18 out of 100. It's an actual legit thing. Plus, I mean, they also got a +1 to appearance, and I wrote for they did, and I wrote for a female gaming website for a while that's now defunct called Charisma Bonus, because you got a charisma bonus for being female.
Right.
Like, inherently in the mechanics, you were sexy. People would do things because you were female and had a vagina. Like, it was a thing that was in the mechanics. Not to mention, like, when you bought the books and you open the books and there's, like, bikini-clad, like, Slave Leia knockoffs all over it. So that is, like, the number 2 thing that, I mean, and it's getting so much better. Like, the 5 ebooks, I love the 5 ebooks. There's some incredible, like, real functional female armor that's out in a lot of the books now, which I just adore looking at.
Right.
The L5R art, oh my god, some of it's so amazing. And
it's the L5R art, at least in 4th edition, it was still there was I wouldn't say there was anything prurient in it at all.
No. I wouldn't either. But like, there's some and I think because there's a lot more art coming out because of the L5R card game. I think there's just more art out there.
I think
now.
that's the vast majority of the art.
And the L5R wiki is full of just great art. I mean, that's what she's talking about, I think, because when you go search for L5R, because the beta doesn't have any artwork for it yet, but there is a large amount of artwork that's been generated, and it's like stuff like this. It's very good.
Yeah, but there is a lot of, if you look at like a lot of the old L5R characters, like the NPC, but the characters in the lore, like one of them is like a sexy siren, like Scorpion, like her like trademark thing is how she dresses scantily clad. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's like, I forget what the character's name is, but, and so there's like still kind of avenues of that, but that was again 4th edition, so it's gone now, hopefully.
Is it Bayushi Kachiko?
Yeah. So like there are these like still these like Slave Leia bikini fantasies that kind of get interwoven in a lot of times, but I'm loving that's kind of going by the wayside now.
It's 2.
Yeah, 2, and I think
less pornographic, and you can read RPG books in public now, and people don't think you're a fucking freak,
right? Exactly.
Fatal aside.
Well, they still think you're a nerd, but they don't think you're.
But you don't look like you're looking at porn or soft porn of some type, right? I'm not afraid to have one at school because some kid might accidentally open it.
Right. Well, I should show you the card game that got sent to me from what's his name from Japan.
Is
it consent to play?
It's
I'll show it to you after the game.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And I think
I don't remember what it's called.
And I think the third thing is kind of and it's again another thing that's changing. The thing that kind of keeps women out is kind of the lack of other women, because it's that's changing. Like
a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. You know, the first cons that we went to 8 years ago. Like, there was not very many women.
No,
we were the
not
only
at all.
There was like me and a couple other
Gina
and that's how like Gina and I like kind of bonded, and they're like, oh good, hi girl, other female to be with, you know, and it turns out Gina and I have everything in common, which was really great. Right. But sometimes that isn't. But I think like that's the other barrier is it's like that thing when you walk into the comic shop or you walk into the gaming store and everyone turns and looks at you and you're like the only one. You're like, okay.
When we first started, we talked about how we never really had female gamers unless they were girlfriends of them, and then once they broke up, they never came back. But I gotta say,
that was the absolute norm
at the
through
cons
the
these
70s
days,
and the 80s.
At the cons these days, it's
not
almost more women than men. I don't have
in the RPG section. You might be right.
I don't have
not
stats
in the war
to back
game
that
section.
up.
Not in the war game section.
But I
the
see
fat beards still have their place.
I see young kids. I see young daughters. I see women all over the place in the convention now, especially in the RPGs. And it happened. I was going to say overnight, but it almost seems like they were always there. But when we first did these cons, they weren't. You were there.
Rare.
You can witness
very
it.
Rare,
Well, I really think that the interest was always there.
Of course.
Like, even as a little kid, like, we all play imaginary games. This is what it is. Like, there's something fundamental about kids and about human beings pretending.
Sure.
That is part of who we are, and that doesn't go away with women. Like, it doesn't change, but I think one of the things that happened is MMOs and online.
Well, yeah, if you're at home, you have a safe place.
Right. Suddenly you're out there, you're playing these RPGs. Nobody knows if you're really a woman or not. So you can do whatever you want with that character in your safe space, and without being ridiculed. Although the minute you get on voice chat, suddenly everyone eviscerates you because they realize you're a girl,
right?
But
which
still happens. So like all those barriers aren't there, but that has like made women braver and made women realize there are other women out there.
Right.
So which has really been a big deal, and that's one of the things I think that's I'm most proud of about this podcast. Is even though it didn't start out as our intention, you had women, you had Claire before me, you had me, we've always had women on, and I've had a ton of people come up to me and say, I listened to Happy Jacks because there were women there. Because I thought, me and my wife would listen together, or because it was great. I was looking for women to play with. I couldn't find anybody, and your podcast had other women. So I think that's one of the things I am most proud of.
The last big RPG survey, we were like the number one podcast for women listeners.
Yeah, and I think in a very organic, not like, look, we have women, vagina, look, vagina.
Right.
Like kind of way, which kind of was happening for a while. And I'm loving now that there are a ton of, other shows.
Not that we weren't doing that, but that was happening on other podcasts, right?
Right.
Oh, we were.
Yeah. Right, but it wasn't in that, like...
I'm going to be honest. No, we it's not like we started this thing and we were like, oh no, we're so far ahead of everyone else.
No, but you invited women who were smart enough to, like, represent well and not in, like, a token way.
That's what
Well, that's because I
say.
didn't know any dumb women.
Right.
It's not a gimmick.
Yeah, it wasn't a gimmick. Yeah, and you picked women who were able to come on and, like, have their say. And even though I know so much more than I did back then, and, like, all these things, and, because we are actually really friends in real life, too, I think that's also kind of getting back to the email that I started this whole rant on. There's that value to the women being there, because like we really mean like even if we had no Happy Jacks, we'd also hang out together and still be really good friends.
Right.
And while I think that's the most important and valuable thing about the Happy Jacks thing, and I think that what sets us apart from a lot of other shows is that like true friendship that would be there whether we had Happy Jacks or not. And I think that really, in a way that that a lot of other shows, and more shows have it now, a ton of great really women-run shows out there. But I think that hey, these women are part of our circle was very revolutionary in a lot of ways.
Do you think maybe that's like the difference between real diversity and tokenism?
Absolutely. Like the actual, like, it's fine to bring someone in and say, hey, we really would love to have a person of color voice, or we really love to have a female voice. But actually having them there and also really embracing them, that's that difference. So bringing them in to have a voice is really important, and that's a great first step. But keeping them and actually accepting them as an equal in the group is so important too.
And isn't it freaking stupid that it took until the 2010s for that to happen?
It's still like,
of course,
today, like with a well-known, fairly well-known, I guess, like D&D player on Twitter, like saying shit like that. It's like,
and Geek and Sundry. I mean, that's blazed that whole trail completely.
Right.
She has a media empire.
Felicia Day.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, I should say her name. Felicia Day actually has a media empire based on that basic concept, which is I'm an intelligent, geeky woman, and I'm not afraid to show it, and I'm going to tell you. And in fact, I'm the Oprah Winfrey of geeks.
Wow, what a great
Ken
title!
in the chat room's like, Happy Jacks RPG, friendship
right
is
now.
magic. Yeah, but I mean, again, like that's still something that women are fighting against, and I know a lot of women. Jessica Chobot is a friend of mine, and things like that. Like a lot of real known like geek sphere women who are basically like doubted all the time.
Oh sure.
Like and like they're just doing this for attention. Oh, it's like, okay, you know what? There's not like big money in the geek sphere.
Oh
really?
With my 1,000 Twitter followers, I am
right?
raking it in.
Right. But I mean, like all these women who are beautiful and go into geeky things, like they can make twice as much money doing just the beautiful things, like
right.
Avoiding the geeky things. But they choose that's like their passion, so they go into that.
Well, there's been a big change in sort of geek and nerd culture where it has not become something that you necessarily, it's still in certain circles you have to hide it, but it is becoming much more socially acceptable.
Right.
In ways,
and celebrated.
And I actually think that's because of WoW.
Yeah.
Because WoW was
100%.
so huge.
Yep.
And there's no way just nerds were playing WoW.
No.
And Magic.
And anime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to anime conventions, the very first Otakon, way back in the day, and it was all mouth-breathing dudes. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Otakon just before I moved out here to LA.
Shaving here.
And it was like, and I was shocked that it was still a lot of mouth-breathing dudes and a lot of very, very ordinary or attractive or whatever women were more than half of the audience. And I felt so encouraged, like, for the species.
Yeah.
Right.
That, like, there was a chance that, like, those gene pools would mix.
Well, I took my daughters and my son to see Baby Metal. That's the
Japanese.
They're so cool.
Yeah.
And I was a little worried that it was going to be what I perceive as the people that go to like anime cons. It was going to be that kind of people. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Not at all. It has to be the weirdest cross section of people ever, because there was all the typical heavy metal concert goers, because there's within the heavy metal community, there's some people that deride them, but there's also some people that are like, nah, it's a pretty good band. And so there's a bunch of those people there, and they're there with their metal shit hanging from their faces, and then there was people like me who are like people with kids, and the kids want to see the band, so dad or mom and dad taking the kids to see the show. Then there was like just middle-aged people. There was a couple there who were sitting next to us. They were sitting next to Allie. They were singing and they knew all the lyrics. I don't think either of them spoke Japanese, but they'd memorized every song that was in the set. And it was this weird cross section of people who were all like, "No, we think this is a really awesome band." Yeah. But I was not expecting that. I was expecting it to be like an old 1980s anime convention.
When was the last time you were at an anime convention?
I have never been to an anime convention. I'm just saying from what I'm assuming.
Okay, so
Alex should come with me to one.
yeah. Go to Anime Expo today, and you will be amazed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not the crowd you expect at all.
That's 90% of what my daughter watches.
Yeah.
Now.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. She has a great taste.
So imagine
I'm just
40,000 of your daughter, and you've got Anime Expo.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, she would not stop bugging me until I watched what's it called?
Fairy Tale?
No.
Oh.
That's the next one she's got me on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I haven't started it yet. The one with the big giant people.
Attack on Titan?
Attack
Titans.
on Titans.
Yeah, so good. Attack on Titan is amazing.
Fantastic.
So good. Yeah, there's a really great storytelling. But yeah, I think you were right on, and like WoW being the thing, because it's funny. Like, I'm going to a new gym, and my trainer's awesome. He's super bro dude, but he's like really knowledgeable. But he played fucking WoW. And he's like super into talking to me about it. Like, even though he doesn't play anymore, he's like, "Oh yeah, and my character, oh my gosh, that's doing," like, we just talked about the new expansion because he hasn't played it. And it was one of those things that really kind of like, and video games in general kind of like, oh, video games are for nerds. And suddenly like things like Call of Duty, like every bro dude, and like all these things start like really, and then all the sports video games. People who were super into football and stuff like that started playing, and suddenly that was part of nerd culture that was no longer nerdy.
Right.
And that sort of
That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
And
Yeah,
that
you're
really
absolutely
introduced, like, oh, hey, I really love these games. Oh, I'm going to play that game. Oh, this game's like D&D. Oh, what is D&D? And it's, oh, all these games are based on these tabletop role-playing games, which then brought more people into hobby. And then you start having things like Twitch, where people are watching people play video games. And then people started streaming tabletop games. And all these things on them that slowly kind of inoculated people into nerddom until they had this immunity built up so they could like walk in and like know what it was.
And
now you have Critical Role having fucking billboards all over Los Angeles.
Right.
I would also say that there's another avenue too, as well, with with Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
The card gaming and the tabletop people who were playing, say, I don't know, a war game or a role playing game or whatever, and the next thing you know, with Magic and all the derivations of Pokemon, all of that stuff, that whole Yu-Gi-Oh, all of that stuff. Is another gateway in, and so you were coming at it from all sides. It suddenly became, as Kimmy said, a legitimate thing. It almost happened while we were starting this podcast. It went from voices crying in the wilderness to this amazing. In what is it? 7 years?
It went from people just now getting over being stuffed in lockers in high school.
Sure. Sure.
Well, nerd culture is pop culture these days.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
100%.
Clearly.
Well, you have to realize.
Well,
too-
is that part of that sort of an online bubble though?
Well, but also movies.
Yes, Tony
Comic-Con,
Stark
Yes.
is now a hero.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it is
true, that's true.
completely overtaken like television and movie studios. Like,
The top grossing movies of all time, the only one of them that's not either science fiction or a superhero is Titanic.
yeah, the fact that I can walk
Okay.
into a mall and have multiple stores I can go to and buy comic themed merchandise, either from movies.
Yeah.
Like that is super pop culture. But the other thing you have to realize too,
What's it like at a football stadium?
100% like Target. No, I mean Target
what I'm
sells
saying is,
Captain American T-shirts. So you will 100%
No, I-
go
no,
into
I-
a football game and people will be wearing Captain
Okay,
American.
all right.
And I would just like to say, as an employee of the Walt Disney Company, buy Marvel and Lucasfilm's merchandise.
Yeah.
Because when we were kids, John Wayne and Charlton Heston were like alpha male heroes. Now it's Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Hiddleston and people of
Yeah.
nebulous moral character. I guess we have different heroes and times have changed around us, Stu.
oh, see, look, Kenigma 23 football. Who watches that? A lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
I do.
And you also have to realize, like, we have a whole generation of kids, like my age. Like, I watched Pokemon as a kid.
I want
And-
to be the
I know,
very best.
Like, I did that. And, like, the Pokemon cards were massive and huge.
Oh, yeah.
So we have now adults who had that as a childhood.
Yeah, the zeitgeist.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, these are nerdy things, and it was not hidden. Like, it was like, marketed and a huge income source. So it was something that was very open. Everybody had Pokemon backpacks. You had all these things. I mean, did you guys have D&D backpacks?
Well, I can use my kids as a great example.
No,
It's
because
like,
we didn't get stuffed in lockers.
Right.
like my kids is a great example, although I never encouraged them to be geeks. Like when Dad has a comic book collection in the garage and has a bunch of gaming books up in there, I guess apparently it's okay. So even though I never, like said, you guys must go out and be geeks, they just it's always because that's what I did.
My kids were pissed off when they found out I was going to Gen Con and not taking them with them.
Right?
And that I will never be able to go to a game convention and not take them with me now.
There you go.
Because they've been to, Zachary's been to 3 and Allie's been to 2 of them, and they're like, oh no, this is awesome. We're coming to this
And
every
I have
time.
been seeing that at the con. I mean,
The
there
more
are
and more kids, yes. Well, and also the
great,
con
though.
stepping up and having more and more stuff for them to do, too.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Because, like, I'm a big fan of science fiction conventions, and the graying of science fiction conventions is a major problem, where there isn't a next generation of science fiction fans that go to the conventions. Unlike comic and anime and gaming, where they've very consciously reached out to young people and included programming to make that interesting to younger people. Whereas like Worldcon, it's just
I think there's going to be a trickle up or a trickle down because people are going to get there through Gallifrey, through Doctor Who, through Star Wars. They're going to get there. It may take them a little bit longer, but because it happened with our cons as well, with WoW and anime, it trickles in. It will replenish itself. It's just
Maybe.
you guys
I
are on the
don't
outer edge
read
of the
much
solar system.
anymore.
I know. I got legless
that.
with George Martin one night, bitching about the fact that only old people come to conventions anymore. And I was like, well, George, you guys used to have gaming programming and movie programming and TV programming, and you kicked all that stuff out because you didn't want anything but literature at the conventions. And he was like, that's right. And the problem is these darn kids, they don't appreciate good science fiction writing, and I'm just like, dude.
That's the gatekeeping that I listed as number 1. Like, you can't do gatekeeping. You have to accept people like at whatever level of fandom they are, like whether they're new, whether they're like, oh no, I want to play the Star Trek video game. I don't want to read the books or whatever it is. Like,
What?
I know, because George R.R. Martin, of all people, should know full well what media can do to a franchise.
Right?
Well, and in his defense, we were pretty drunk.
you're just glad you got away without dying.
Yeah, well, no, I was knighted by George Martin on Passyunk Avenue in Philadelphia at 3 a.m. outside Pat's King of Steaks.
You're so cool.
Well, thank you. And I have gotten him drunk and lost in several cities, and have been officially.
You know what? We're all gonna blame you for the fact that there's no new book.
It's
because you've been keeping them too
You've
drunk to
been
write.
But actually, no. Since that show took off, like nobody's seen him. He's so superstar.
He's so well known now. Yeah.
I'm gonna read this. I gotta work tomorrow.
Go.
Okay.
All right, Confessions horror story from Minnesota. Die Tosser.
Die tosser.
Tosser. Greetings, Gerpsman.
Yeah.
The RPG squad. Minnesota Dice Tosser again with more tales of woe.
Whoa.
Nail him to the tree of woe. Or should we do it like Keanu Reeves? Wow. In the land of sub-zero temperatures. First, Confessione. I was running a 3rd edition D&D game for a few coworkers and some of their friends. In my infinite cleverness, I had designed a high-level 17th series of adventures with powerful NPCs, deadly traps, horrible monsters, and confounding puzzles. While I did a decent job crafting my quest, my implementation was flawed at best. I made characters search for clues and punished them if they failed their roles. I made players solve puzzles that I thought were easy and berated them when they asked for clues and couldn't do it.
You idiots!
You idiots! It's Stimpy as a GM. You idiot! I created combat encounters that put the characters in difficult situations and punished them for making poor tactical decisions. I often said no to their requests and questions or quashed any attempt to deviate from my predetermined solution. Long story short, I was terrible to my players in every way. I gave my players some train tracks and put them in a cart and bashed them with a shovel whenever they looked anywhere but straight ahead. Shame, shame, shame.
Shame.
But you know what? He's realized that he has
Shame.
problems. Shame. That was a great Western.
I want to live forever.
But thanks to Happy Jacks,
Shame!
But thanks to Happy Jacks, I'm a recovered control freak. Now,
Oh, no, you gotta still be a control freak if you're going to GM.
right. And now I'm happy to let the players follow whatever path or track they like. Now, on to the gaming horror story.
Because that wasn't a horror story.
Let me unmute your mic. What did you say? I'm sorry.
I gave you like an instant. I'm not a control freak.
Now on to the gaming horror story.
Nobody buys that shit.
It started innocent enough with a game pitch for a new campaign set in the city of Sigil with a Planescape verse. The players were encouraged.
By the way, the 4 o'clock Fate game is set in Sigil. Yeah.
And I just want to say,
Tomorrow.
by the way, I love this story, and
I love
fantastic.
Planescape. Planescape was like one of the video games I played because I didn't realize it was based on an actual D&D property until halfway through the game. I'm like, holy crap! This is so awesome. Anyway. So Planescape.
Playground Games is running it tomorrow. West Otis.
I know, and I had to bow out because I have to work. The players. Just give me a paper cut and pour lemon juice in it. Why don't you?
Have beer or whiskey.
The players were
Whiskey
encouraged to
would
create
burn more.
unusual. All right, I'm reading. Hello. The characters were then reduced by the Sensate Society.
Recruited.
Thank you. Recruited by the as I went by that word, I'm like, that can't be right. Recruited by the Sensate Society, and given a directive to go forth and experience a variety of unusual things all the while recording, in quotes, their experiences to share with the society. An interesting premise. We followed every hook and took on any task, including our dwarf cutting his own finger off and eating it. Ew.
Why?
The first few games in Sigil were fine. The hypochondriac, germophobic catfolk had the Goliath convinced the barrels he traveled with were vital goods, soap, standard low-level adventuring fun. Then we opened a planar gate.
Uh-oh.
The first encounter outside Sigil is a plant creature.
Sorry.
Sigil is a plant creature which grapples each character as they pass through the gate. I'm going to need help with this.
Kirpka?
Kirpka.
Squirrel folk.
Squirrel folk. Sword Sage was first grappled, poisoned, paralyzed, dead in 3 rounds. If we hadn't had a Githzerai. Githzerai monk. No one would have survived. That night we were attacked, random encounter, by some form of level draining undead. We survived. Somehow. The following day, we
We're
were
all first
attacked
level.
by some bizarre planar creature. It paralyzes the dwarf and takes all his belongings, leaving him naked and cold. He covers himself in mud, as one does.
As one does.
We
doesn't
play an
make you
entire
warmer.
session without the dwarf getting an opportunity to re-equip at all. So he's just running around naked.
No, he's wearing mud.
Yeah,
The,
mud.
the players make jokes about the Sensei Society enjoying the poverty experience. Later, we camped in a ruined tower and were set upon by more obscure planar monsters, this time wielding a staff that permanently drains charisma from anyone it hits. So the half-dragon, half-halfling?
Halfling.
Half-dragon, halfling. That's,
He's a half dragon and a half halfling.
that's what I said.
He's a very
He's a
short.
half-dragon.
But isn't that
Dragon.
half dragon quarterling?
But wait, there's more. So it's the half-dragon, halfling
Oh my God, too much math.
swashbuckler sorcerer who slept on a pile of treasure he kept in a bag of holding, promptly gets charisma drained
Which is brilliant.
to
It
one.
is. His charisma's drained to 1. Okay.
Bearing in mind he's a swashbuckler
So he's Marty
sorcerer.
Feldman.
Yeah.
Right, no, he's a... Well, but sorcerers are charisma-based.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you basically...
So are swashbucklers.
Right, so are swashbucklers. So you've taken away... Yeah. All right, so we spent the whole next session chasing the charisma thieves, trying to get his charisma score restored. The muddy, naked
So what?
dwarf-
You go take it back?
Okay, you guys just should have gotten some contouring going. Like, it would make everything better.
Yeah.
Get some makeup on there.
I can't decide if my new band name is Charisma Thieves or Muddy Naked Dwarf.
Right?
Money Naked. I'd go with Money Naked Dwarf.
And Charisma Thieves is your first hit song.
Yes.
Oh my god, the title of your first album. Oh my god, Charisma Thieves.
That's the album. That's the
Yeah,
album.
that's the
title,
album.
yes.
That's it.
The muddy and naked dwarf wanders away in frustration at the end of the second session with no equipment or clothes. See, it writes itself.
It's
right?
brilliant.
Right there.
It's brilliant.
The rest of our weird, severely weakened, damaged, level, drained, poisoned, diseased, ability damaged, and drained adventuring party can you do tracking the ugly stick. And it was, right? At that point, you got hit with the ugly stick. We followed the villains into
Contouring. Telling you.
Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and eventually into a demiplane where we fought to the bitter end with only a couple survivors fleeing in failure. We decided that was enough Planescape for now. Now, this might not be the worst horror story, but I bet you wouldn't want to play a naked dwarf for most of 2 sessions, or a sorcerer with a charisma of 1. Just saying. Planar sandboxes should be filled with strange new toys and weird adventures, not poison ivy, fire ants, and thorny burrs. Upon reflection, we never should have left Sigil. Once again, thanks for the great content. P.S. Drink! Then save versus poison.
Uh-oh.
PPS, so long, and thanks for all the ability damage.
Absolutely.
PPS, more Tales of Horror from the Multiverse, coming soon.
I
to a theater
freaking
near you.
love that story. Like,
That's
there's
well
played.
so much wonderful in
I
it.
know.
But
Yeah.
I'm guessing he didn't run this. He played in it.
Yes.
And all I have to say is, however much of a sack of hurt that experience was, that story is priceless.
That's
Yeah.
why we love horror stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all learn more from the horror stories than we do from people saying, "Oh, actually, us."
Yeah.
Well, and I think they make us feel good because it's like, oh god, like we've all had that fuck up. Like no
Oh, yeah.
matter how great a GM you are or how great a player, you always had that oh shit moment.
At some point, you were kind of
Yeah.
shitty. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like fuck a cheeseburger bad most of the time, but like
That
we've all
was-
had moments like that. That is that's
It's
like
the best horror story ever,
fine,
or worst.
There's a
Or,
line, but yes, we've all had that moment, and it's like that camaraderie. Like,
For 2 XP. Sorry.
ooh, fucking XP.
Although it wasn't in White Wolf. So that, I mean, World of Darkness. That's significant. That's like
Yeah.
a whole session.
I
But like,
You can't blame him
no
for that.
shit. There I was, a naked, mud-covered dwarf,
Right.
lost in the planescape, chasing a,
for
that's
2 sessions.
amazing.
And whenever I asked if I could do anything, they went, "Do you have a weapon?" Nope. All right. Nope. I
Oh no, you
I
can
hold
still,
my action.
An unarmed attack. I think you get a D4 or something.
You could use the aid action to give somebody else a +2.
There you go. I'm going to aid you with my nakedness.
Naked dwarf buff, naked dwarf buff.
See, and then the game gets weird, and that's how games go sideways, right there.
Yeah.
But that's brilliant.
Bounce
All right.
bow wow.
All right. That it?
Yeah.
Don't forget JackerCon 14 on the 17th of March through the 20th. No, April 1st.
Yep.
So it's it's running a long time. Yeah, March 17th to April 1st. Been spending most our lives in a subterranean paradise.
And if you don't remember,
just
Google JackerCon. It will come up.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Coolio Baranzan. A little bit.
What?
And I'll be adding that to the website too. I'll be adding a link to them through us. If you go to happyjacks.org, there's a tab that's community, and it's got a link to our Discord, it's got a link to our forum, it's got a link to all our fan art, which is on our walls. And tonight, probably, depending on how much I drink before I go home, it will also have JackerCon linked.
And March 16th, February 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Hilton Hotel, Strategicon Orcon 2018.
We will be there. Do the thing.
It will be awesome.
And if you do show up, seriously, come and introduce yourselves. We have brains like sieves. And you can recognize us. In fact, that's how we met CA Dave and Rob, because they recognize our voices.
And Nick be like joining the podcast. Like that is how hosts are made. Is buying us beer.
Or just come and introduce yourselves. Please don't be shy.
Speaking of which,
go ahead.
If you're not busy on Dritzmas Eve, which is March 17th, for some people it's St. Patrick's Day, we will be doing a Dritzmas Eve show at the Petroleum Club in Long Beach, California. The Boggards are headlining. The Merry Wives of Windsor will be there as well as Sportive Tricks. That's Kurt Hanna's band, who's running the Vampire Dark Ages game. So I don't know what time the show starts. I'm going to guess around 8 o'clock. I haven't seen tickets yet. But you should go to that show because that's a great place to meet us when we're not on stage.
It's full of gamers.
When we're not on stage.
Right.
I would
same with Fair.
Like to reiterate.
The Renaissance Fair is the same way. I mean, Jesse is in Merry Wives of Windsor. She's there. Kurtz and his crew are... Anyway, there's lots and lots of people that you will know.
That's awesome.
Or heard of.
That's exactly. All right.
But anyway, my point is, please introduce yourselves. And even if you introduced yourself last time, please reintroduce yourself.
Because Stork was drunk.
Chances are.
I'm going to end it.
All right.
We're listeners of Happy
Thank you for joining us for season 21, episode 3 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Davey.
I'm Stork.
Thank you very much. And don't forget the Dritzmas gift exchange. That's dritzmas@gmail.com. Dritzmas@gmail.com. And then you'll get a registration thing and you can get a Dritzmas present for Dritzmas.
Absolutely. And tomorrow is One Shot Saturday for January. Those games will actually not be available on podcast. You have to tune in and watch them either on Twitch live or you can watch them on YouTube later. We have
a fake game.
Yeah, we have a fake game in the afternoon run by Wes Otis.
Game, right?
Yeah, and we have Jib is running his
Bad Streets.
Bad Streets. That's what it is. I'm like detective.
That's 11 to 4.
Yeah, 11 to 4.
3.
He's running Bad Streets in the morning. We have some new faces. It should be super fun.
Yeah.
Are you Wes?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll leave with a song.
Bacchus now his crown resign. I am the only god of wine, the only god of wine. 'Tis not fit that wretch should be. In competition who can drink more? Who can drink 10 times more than he? Can drink 10 times more than he? Who can drink 10 times more? Drink 10 times more than he? Make a new world, be powers divine, worlds that make nothing else but wine. A new world, powers divine, a world make a new world, nothing else but wine. Make a new world, ye powers divine, with nothing else but wine. A new world, nothing with nothing else but wine. Let wine be earth, and sea. Let wine be a thunder and sea. Wine be earth and sea. Earth there and let that wine and let that wine be all for me. And let that wine be all for me.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire. Bum, 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 bum.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
Go away, Baton. Welcome to Costco. I love you.